Hello, I'm Franklin Horton. I'd like to welcome you to the Post-Apocalyptic panel. 45 minutes of crunchy gloom and doom into the world goodness. Yes. I should be pretending like I'm Kyla Stone. She was supposed to moderate this panel. I was going to say I'm Kyla and the apocalypse has been hard on me. But we're going to start off here with introductions of our panelists. After a few minutes of that, we will go on to some questions, the prepared questions that Kyla sent us. And then when we have about 20 minutes remaining, we'll go on to questions from the audience. I like to leave a lot of room for that, so if you have good questions, be queuing them up and ready to go. We don't have a mic for questions, so you'll have to shout loudly so we can hear you, and then we will be repeating your question for the streaming folks. So, Tara, if you would like to start. No.
Okay. Hello, my name is Tara Ellis, and I'm a post-apocalyptic author, but I've also written in several other genres. Need to talk louder? How's that? All right. Thank you. Tara Ellis, and I currently write in post-apocalyptic, and I've been doing that for the past 3 years or so. I've got 3 series and 18 books as of this coming week, writing with Muonic Press. And prior to that, I have my own books that I've written, so now I will have a total of 42 books, novels out, in addition to the box sets and audiobooks and such. But I found my home in post-apocalyptic. My history before that is was still trying to figure out what I wanted to be when I grew up. I was a firefighter and EMT, 911 dispatcher, and worked in ER for a while. So I pull on a lot of that experience in my novels for obvious reasons. When I'm not thinking up creative ways to destroy mankind, I enjoy hiking and nature photography. So, and my grandchild and my kids.
I'm David Simpson. How's the sound we good? All right, I write post-apocalyptic zombie fiction, of course. Well, with all these latest stuff from China, it may not be fiction so much anymore. But I write zombie books. I've got Zombie Road as the series. There's a spinoff. That's all I've done, 12 books. I'm jealous. I got some catching up to do.
Josh?
Hi. You hear me? Josh Gayou, you can see by the really good calligraphy. I wrote the Commune series. We're doing numbers here. I think I've written 11 or 12 books. I don't remember how many. And I have no idea what I'm doing right now. So that's all I got.
Well, as I said, I'm Franklin Horton. As you can tell from my accent, I'm from Spain. So just imagine that there are English subtitles underneath translating. I've been writing since 1989. That was when I wrote my first novel. I was an utter failure under the trad system. Tried 8 novels that I never could get an agent for. So when KDP came along and the whole indie movement picked up, I started writing like a fiend. Post-apoc was my favorite thing to read at the time, so that's where I went. I have 37 novels, 29 of which are post-apoc, and I do this full-time now, so I live in my little post-apoc bubble every day, sitting there cranking them out and just living in the gloom and doom. We're going to start with a question. The way we'll do this is I'll allow each of you to answer the question. That way we don't have to brawl it out and fight over who's going to answer. So let's start with what's your favorite part about writing in the post-apoc genre? Yes.
I was thinking about this earlier today because I peeked at the questions. And, I have to say that I also I have an ongoing 12-book middle grade mystery series, and that was what I started with. And young adult sci-fi trilogy, and a cozy mystery series, and a thriller. And like I said, I've been trying to figure out what I want to be for a long time. But I think what it is about the post-apocalyptic genre that just really inspires me to keep writing in it is just the diversity of the characters. And every genre has its trope, obviously. As much as we love to write, a lot of us are here because we want to make a business out of it, a career. And so we want to write to market. And that means sticking with some of those tropes so that we don't get the nasty reviews and we get readers. And in Post-Apocalyptic, I love the ability to take any character from any walk of life and throw them in this life or death situation and just see what happens. And so I tend with the series that I've done, I rotate POVs through my characters for each chapter. And I'll have I've had a 70-year-old character and I've had a 12-year-old as a main POV that I rotate through. And I love the diversity of being able to take all these different kinds of, like I said, walks of life and how they're going to react in different ways and, make everything fall apart around them. But I enjoy that the most, just that character development. My stories are very character-driven, and so I want the reader to feel like by the time they get to the end that they've been on a journey with each of these characters and have seen them change in a realistic manner.
What I like about the post-apoc system is everybody's dead. And you're the survivor, you're the hero of the book, or you're the reader, so you sympathize with the protagonist. And I think a lot of people that read post-apoc think the world is going to hell in a handbasket, and I don't know, we're looking for ideas to survive it, just as fantastical as they are. And the zombie apocalypse, it's not a slow death for everybody, just everybody's dead all at once from the zombies, and you have a group of survivors fighting against all these odds, and basically they're rebuilding society. In most zombie books, their survivors are trying to start over and rebuild.
Josh.
Thanks. All right. When I was a little kid, I read The Stand. I'm guessing some of you may have read it too. And there was, in that experience reading that book, the process of walking into a store that was empty and selecting whatever you needed off of the rack and then walking out and the world is empty. The world's your playground. I think that captured my imagination when I was a kid, on a very superficial level, right? You go into a store and you just grab what you want. Yay, it's Christmas. And then I think as I became an adult and was still interested in that genre, what works for me is I think a lot of people are just dissatisfied with where they ended up or how some things turned out. And I think that this genre lends itself well to people redefining who they are or resetting who they want to be. It's a big do-over. All the receipts are wiped out. All the records are gone. All the credit history, the tax man isn't coming after you anymore. You could just be who you want to be out there. You could be who you always wanted to be. And that was what interested me the most. Sometimes I kind of feel like fake Joker, because my first book worked for me. It got a release, it did well. The books that came after that came well, so I didn't have to slog like a lot of people have had to. Sometimes we feel imposter syndrome, I think, but that was the first thing I wanted to write, was that setting, and I wanted to explore who we all are and what we do to each other when there's nobody looking over our shoulders and enforcing any rules, any manners. I think I'm going to leave it there.
Well, addressing that same question, I think one of the things that I like about Post-Apoc is during the pandemic, I had other writer friends who'd be like, man, I bet your sales are tanking during the pandemic. And they couldn't hide their excitement, just the idea that the genre that so many people see as being built on gloom and doom might, be pressed down by this experience that the entire world was going through. But that was not the case. Sales were really good during the pandemic. They went up.
Yeah.
And I think that is because everybody who writes this knows that post-apoc is really a genre about hope. It's about people being resilient. It's about people finding their inner strengths. It's about people prevailing over a circumstance that has changed in a way that they couldn't predict and that nobody predicted. And I think people see the strength in that. And I think even if they're not always able to verbalize what they're getting from post-apoc books, I think they're excited by that. And I think that's why we found new readership during the pandemic, was people like to see people able to prevail in a horrible set of circumstances.
Either that or they're looking for a handbook.
Yeah,
How the hell am I going to get through this?
yeah, there was a lot of that.
Franklin, just real quick, I think you really hit on it there. I try to explain to people that my stories actually have what I like to call a not happy ending, but a hopeful ending. And I really do think that's a huge draw for readers in post-apocalyptic, and probably for a lot of us writers too, is to find that way to get through and to have that hope and to make something good out of a horrible situation. So,
I agree. This next one is about the genre tropes in PA, because it's not a one-size-fits-all. There are lots of little subgenres and lots of particular directions it can go in. So this question is, do you feel like genre tropes are changing in post-apoc? Is there room for expanding these genre to include elements such as suspense, mystery, thriller, horror?
probably already tell I love this question. Absolutely. I already said I've got my roots in mystery writing, and I have to say, so I write with Mnemonic Press with Micah Krause and across, and I have to say that I appreciate him letting me flex that a little bit in the series that I've just released after the crash. The sixth final book comes out this week. Very excited. And there's a lot of mystery in this one. I will say it's about the world being destroyed, of course, but I have a lot of threads. I like to call it threads. Anyone who's written any mystery or cozy or even thrillers. I really enjoy the intricate plot lines where you've got these various threads that are all coming together with quite a few reveals and shocks along the way, because it's key, especially when you're writing a big series, is that you've got that overall arc, the main conflict and the resolutions, but you've got to have those plot points and those beats in between each book, in the book itself, and then drawing them also from one book onto the next. Just got to keep going, and so that means you've got all these various things going on that culminate at the end with something hopeful after all the death and gloom. So I love the mystery element. I love the thriller element, and I've kind of seen also a trend, probably largely thanks to Kyla Stone, who's amazing, for young adult. I think there's a big interest in that angle also for those of you who are obviously interested in writing post-apocalyptic. I think that might be something that's up and coming.
Well, speaking from the zombie end of things, dude, there's a Walt Disney kids show about zombies. There's cartoons about zombies. There's Minecraft zombie books. I mean, you do a Google search on end of the world scenarios, zombies is just, it's huge. I don't even know how many books there are in it, thousands. There's movies coming out all the time on Netflix, Hulu, Amazon. And there's room for expansion in that world because there's now zombie comedies, zombie romance. I mean, who's seen Warm Bodies? One of my favorite was, what was that one when they were in California and the wife was a real estate agent and they turned into a zombie? Santa Clarita Diet. That's it, Santa Clarita Diet. Okay, this guy might be dangerous to be around then. But anyway, yeah. There's loads of expansion for the zombie world anyway.
Josh.
Yeah, genre boundaries annoy me. I don't like them. I think the more ideas, the better. Post-apocalyptic, I think it can get a little too narrow. You can see a little too much of the same things.
Is this part of the show?
No.
Bring the advisor. Man, you're right there in the neighborhood.
I used to do a contest for a fan club where I would shoot a book with, I had a lot of guns. Any gun. Anything up to a 50 caliber, I'll shoot a book and mail you a book.
Okay, so we've got 22 minutes until the end of the session, and I don't know what they're going to do about timing, but they want us to stay on schedule, so I'm
Right.
guessing we've got 22 minutes.
Thank you, babe.
Okay, what I'll do is then just open it to.
Open it to questions.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, I'll get another timer.
Yeah, I don't need
Okay.
to bloviate
Sounds good.
anymore.
It was close. Yeah. I think there was always out in the hallway.
Seen a few in the casino.
I've definitely seen some films.
Everybody still with us?
Okay, I don't know if we're streaming or not, but we'll at least start talking again. We're going to leave off with the prepared questions and just start taking your questions so we can at least squeeze in some fun before we get booted out of here. If you would, please stand up and talk loud because all of us shoot guns and can't hear worth shit.
All right, I volunteered it. So I talked to David about it and Tara, and this is kind of a question for you folks and anybody in the room. I broke all the tropes in my series. I mean, just about anything that is considered a trope in apocalyptic fiction, I did the opposite. So marketing is hard, and I haven't done a review that was right at the top that says this is a brilliant book, but it breaks all the tropes. So advice for marketing and/or if you write with a lot of breaking all the tropes, I'd love to talk to you. So ideas on how to market or anything?
Is there anyone who wants to jump forward and address that question?
I really don't like marketing. I'll be honest. How many of you here really like marketing? Good. That's good. I love to write, and I mean, if it wasn't my money, I would do a lot more of it. But so no, I'm sorry, Rob. I don't have a good answer for you, except for I guess it depends on the kind of tropes that you broke. If you can figure out how to narrow down who you're targeting, is it a young adult versus adult? Who's going to be buying that book if you look at it from, abstractly from outside of the writer's angle. And then find a way to specifically target that more of a...
Mixed genre, so post-apoc is like a second, maybe?
Yeah, maybe, and you could, maybe test it with some ads and see which one does or doesn't click. But then, you got to figure out where you're going to test it.
Well, I think-
Another option might be to put that question to your readers, the people who really like the book. Ask what stands out to them because maybe they can give you the direction that you need to market toward.
Yeah, one thing I would say is that what you said was I broke all the tropes or all the rules so that might be a little much, especially if you're trying to build the thing as post-apocalyptic. There's going to be readers coming in with certain expectations of what they're going to find there. And if you're missing that or you're going too far off, I don't know, brand, kilt, whatever, there's probably going to be some confusion there. I think to the point that was made earlier, maybe try tweaking one thing instead of doing all of it at once. It's like you're cooking a recipe. You know, you're making some food, and when we don't know what we're doing, or not what we don't know what we're doing, we're starting out, we want to throw all the ingredients at it, right? Like, all of these things are delicious, they're all wonderful, but when you put it together, it all gets confused, and you start to realize that the best recipes, they have maybe 3-4 ingredients, you know? So I would say pick the one thing that you really want to play with to make your story stand out, and then really work on that, and then give your readers places where they can feel like they're still grounded in the genre they were looking for in the first place. Okay. You know, you got to kind of trick them to get them away from what it is they think they want.
Yeah. Rob, are you talking about your first book?
Yeah.
In Seattle?
Yeah.
I read that one. It's been a while, but did you gear it towards young adult sci-fi?
I did, but it also has a middle-aged male protagonist, one of the point of view characters.
Well, there's nothing wrong with that.
Just hearing you guys, if I relaunch, I have ideas.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
thank you. That
Maybe a
was
rewrite or you know, kind of pare it
Make one
down.
point of view character.
If you hit them with it all at once, it can be overwhelming. I think maybe.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, because you got to think about who your audience is.
Well, Zombie Road broke a lot of tropes, but in the first, it's a series, and it took 6 to 7 books before it was non-post-apocalyptic zombie stuff. But the foreshadowing I did brought everybody along. The very first book, in the very first paragraph, tells you some weird stuff that's going to go on. No spoilers, but it takes you 7 books to figure out what that first couple of sentences meant.
I love stories that tell you.
Yeah, you with the yellow lanyard.
To make sure you're serving up what readers are expecting, where do you draw the line between post-apocalyptic and near future dystopian in a collapsing world? And does that line matter?
No, I think it
Henry.
does, but it doesn't to me.
So,
Okay, you're going to have to repeat it to me because that was a good question,
Yeah,
but
it was, yeah.
it's kind of long and I lost.
I think I got it.
Okay.
So the question was, when you're talking about tropes and writing to market with this genre, where do you draw the line between post-apocalyptic and dystopian? And I've got both going. I have a young adult sci-fi. It's more dystopian than post-apocalyptic, even though post-apocalyptic is where you're in the event. A lot of it starts with the event itself as it's unfolding and occurring. Readers love all of that excitement. And dystopian tends to be more after the fact, more world building, sometimes political, you know, like Hunger Games and such. So it's afterwards, and you've got all these social conflicts and, you know, that you have to overcome because of what that event did. Is that close? you think?
Yeah, for me, the line kind of becomes dystopian when systems and new institutions are being established, and you know that's just my personal thing. But once I get to the point that time has passed and new systems of politics or whatever being established, then I've moved to dystopian.
Yeah, I would say if you look at history itself, it's a continuum, right? I mean, you don't have an apocalypse and then everything stays broken. How many apocalypses has this world seen already just throughout its history? Things break apart, they fall over, everybody becomes animals for a little while, and then we start to rebuild. That's just what humans do. So I think on a long enough timeline, you can go from apocalypse back to established society if you want to go that far. And I think really the trick to that isn't so much that you jump in with both feet and do it all at once, but you know, it must be gradual. Everything in storytelling is gradual. You don't get to jump in and have the crazy shit like right up front. You have to earn that. You have to build up to that, and everything is about that process.
I've been authorized to add 10 minutes if you all want it.
I'll take it.
We'll take it.
They paid for it. Let's give it to them.
So we are now back to having 23 minutes and, 14 seconds. You gentlemen, did you both have a question?
He stood up first.
Okay.
Hi, you probably heard some of my commentary earlier. I'm quite happy in the post-nuclear, post-apocalypse realm. My buddy didn't come back after the fire alarm. I'm kind of asking on his behalf. And I think some of what you just spoke to kind of answers this question, but I wanted to throw it out there anyway. I know that one of the things he was thinking about is fantasy setting, the world comes down, it's still very much a post-apocalypse, the same tropes apply. How, do you think that's a thing where you can bridge audiences, where you can market to both kind of genres depending on how things are going?
This question relates to the ability, if I'm summarizing correctly, to include fantasy elements in post-apoc to where it reaches multiple audiences?
Yes.
Yes. Who wants to?
Basically, fantasy empire has fallen and the world is crap again.
May I?
Absolutely.
Okay, so my answer is probably not going to be the smart answer, okay? But if I was going to write something like that, that would be the last thing I was worried about. I would be more concerned with what is the purpose of the story, what is the idea that I'm trying to convey, and what are my characters? What is going to be their journey through this mess that I'm about to put them through, and what's the point? Like what?
That is your not smart answer.
Why do you tell a story, right? You're trying to convey an idea to some audience, and everything that you do when you write it must serve that idea. If you're not serving that idea, then you're wasting somebody's time. So I think my strategy is usually, if I focus on those things, if the story is meaningful, at least to me, and I think that I'm providing a meritorious, satisfactory ending, then I'm happy. And it's like I said, that's hard to market. My publisher is pissed at me all the time. Okay, they don't like it when I hop genres. They don't like it when I start bending the rules. But I'm not going to do this unless I can do that, because staying within these little lanes is boring to me. So I think, write the thing the way it feels best to you. And then what I've always told myself every time I start a new book is, you start to think, well, who's going to want to read this? Who cares about this? The answer is simple. The right people will care. It'll find the right people. It's not going to find it on its own. You're probably going to have to haul ass to do it, but man, you got to write what you want to write. Otherwise, what the hell are we here for?
Dude, write it. Tell him to write it. It's a whole new genre. I mean, it's post-apocalyptic fairy world, right? They have different problems, different issues, different everything.
Kind of did that. Saber 8. Sorry, I've been reading this stuff for a long time. I was thinking mechanical Leibowitz in answer to your last question, because it begins with an apocalypse and ends with an apocalypse.
I mean, just as an aside, right? Up to a few years ago, and look, nothing against anybody who's interested or enjoys lit RPG. I personally don't understand it, right? That genre, like the boundaries and the mechanics of writing in that space don't make sense to me. And a few years ago, I would have said no. Like you gotta have stakes, you gotta have risk. People have to be in danger and so forth. People don't want to know about systems. They don't want to know about points. But it's tearing up the landscape right now. It's killing everything. I know lit RPG is doing better than my books. So, look, anybody who tells you they know how to do this, right, and they're serious, you should probably just run. We can tell you like what we know, what worked for us, but there's a whole breadth of stuff out there that nobody's even dreamed of yet, and one of you are going to find it at some point.
Yeah, and your
Just
friend should
keep
probably
digging.
look at like Eric Vall's books, Vall. He writes a post-apocalyptic wasteland fantasy type thing full of weird mutant creatures and the relationships that they all have with each other. But his books are pretty successful. Might be somebody to target through ads anyway.
I would just add real quick, going back to my least favorite topic of marketing. So coming at it from a business viewpoint, I mean, absolutely write the story you want. I think it sounds really cool. Just keeping in mind that when you look at who you're writing to in the market, there's the two big ones. There's science fiction, there's fantasy, and then we're post-apocalyptic subgenre of sci-fi, and now you're looking at a post-apocalyptic subgenre of fantasy, which is a really cool idea. And like I said, I'm sure there's some, similar to that. But I would think, though, that you would be looking at the fantasy as your main genre because you're world building, where we build lots of other stuff,
as
but not
an
the world.
example, the series I'm working on right now, Commune, several years into the post-apocalypse, so inside baseball, in the next few books I'm going to be working on, you've got kind of clannish societies that are building up, and a lot of it looks like feudalism, which there's elements of fantasy there if I choose to explore that. People aren't going to be walking around with swords and sandals, but if I'm interested in playing with those ideas, I get to. And by this point, 7 books in now, I kind of feel like I've earned the right to if I want to do that.
Thanks.
What I was wondering about is if you've got a post-apocalyptic setting where the world is just now starting to rebuild, where institutions are coming into play, but they're very fragile and shifting. So how could you work in elements of dystopia from what's ahead, but also work in elements of survival from what's behind, if that makes any sense?
Define dystopia.
To summarize that question again, he's asking if in writing in the time period soon after an apocalypse, you want to include elements of the rebuilding and a more dystopian direction and how to integrate those. That's okay.
Yeah, I was wondering if it's possible to include elements of both survival and dystopia.
Anything is possible.
Read your history book.
And was wondering how might I go about this?
Read your history books. Look at how the United States of America was forged, in detail, all through it.
But also,
You'll see a society
look at your
build
plot.
up and, yeah.
I mean, you find the elements that you want to include based on where you're starting and where you're ending up, and that'll help you figure out what your character is going to be exposed to in that journey from start to finish. So maybe rather than building the entire world at the beginning, you focus on what that character's journey is and figure then what he needs to make him get to the place you want him to be.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Basically reiterate what you said with the main conflict and a resolution. Once you've got that set up, then you can do all your subplots and your points that you can hit along the way. And that's the fun thing with all those sub-beats that you put in there. You can pull in all those other elements and do your world building with that, and you can have the different conflicts that come into play underneath that main.
Yes, you with the yellow lanyard.
How do you navigate with fluctuating politics and everything, the expectations for the characters in books? For example, in case everyone has to go to a FEMA camp or something like that, there are very polarized opinions about what that might be like. How do you navigate the line for the characters?
Oh, I'd say we all have opinions on that. Who wants to start?
Well, if it's post-apocalyptic, then your survivor doesn't go to a FEMA camp. He has a bug-out bag, and he's probably a prepper. But if
The opinions of the characters, though, and how do you keep from being too polarizing?
No, you have to. Know your characters, know what their beliefs are, and then explore that. It's not off limits. You have to have flawed humans that are wrong sometimes in your stories. There's going to be controversial viewpoints. Don't be afraid of that.
Yeah, and
go
I
into the
think
weeds.
that,
The beliefs of the author, right, shouldn't be in the text.
that's exactly it. That's it.
It's the belief of the characters And there's going to be readers who don't understand that. They're going to think that's you. That's okay. Let them go. They're not who you're writing for anyway. The right people are going to get this. Don't shrink away from it. Explore it.
And just a follow-up to that, how do you feel with any fallout, unintended, consequences of that sort of thing? Do you have readers kind of, especially as a woman?
If there's feedback that warrants a response, if it's thoughtful criticism, respond to it. If it's foolish and non-constructive, you don't even need to look at it. Just ignore it.
Never, they say never read your reviews, but I got death threats from my books. So
I was once accused in a review of having rape fantasies. There's idiots out there. You just ignore them. They're the weirdos. That's theirs. That's not yours.
And I think we didn't repeat the question. So you were asking about basically politics, like if you're writing about a FEMA camp, and how do you stay, what did you say, polarized? How do you navigate through that? Yeah. Yeah, very carefully. I mean, it's been such a hot topic, anything, even somewhat viewed politically for the last few years. And really, as an author, you tell your story. And like you said, you know your characters. And our main goal, I think, is to portray these characters as real people and reacting how they really would. I know for myself, not this series, but my other ones, I did actually have some FEMA camps involved, but not the typical kind. For me, it was a lot of research. I believe that so long as I have the specifics down accurately, as far as, do most people even understand what a FEMA camp is, or that they've got stashes of supplies, around the country in various places, and when are those initiated and dispersed, and how does it set up, and what does that look like? Everyone's going to have a different idea of that. For me, I try when I deal with something that's real, I want to get it right, as far as just the details and the specifics. How the people react to it and what actually comes of that's where the storytelling comes in. I stay away from politics. Sometimes people are going to read it into it no matter what. And like you said, you just can't worry about that. It is what it is. Whenever I have a military involved, again, a lot of research, down to the, even so much as how do they refer to each other? They might be this rank, but how are they going to actually address each other? How are they going to talk? What's the actual type of weapon that they're going to have? So I want, first and foremost, I want it to be accurate. And then I want people's reactions to be accurate. And I don't want to paint a broad brushstroke because of perception. It's going to be pertain to my story. And you mentioned, specifically being a woman. I haven't had any complaints in regards to any of the stuff that you would think a woman would get talked down to for. I did get a 1-star review because the reader was upset when they realized that they were reading a book that was authored by a woman. They wouldn't have even bothered. So, I mean, it's out there. It just is. And again, it goes back to, I don't care.
There are authors who use their
care.
books as a vehicle for their own personal commentary. There's a lot of that in post-apoc. And
Yawn.
I think the answer is truly to, your characters are people who will have opinions, and let them have those fights. But it's not to become the vehicle for your own opinions. And my personal favorite way to deal with negative emails is I have a form letter that I send back that says, Franklin Horton does not have time to respond to you personally, but he is so pleased to hear that you enjoyed his book. And then it directs them to my website to sign up for my mailing list.
I think I'm going to do that. Know your characters, know their psychology, write them as authentically as you can. That's how you deal with it. I can go first if nobody wants to take it.
Just to repeat the question, it's about author collaboration and how you world build when you have two authors doing that together.
So I just wrote Commune 5 with Devin C. Ford. He came and did that with me. It was my first time collaborating with anybody. I found it to be a wonderful experience. The point of involving other people in my series was because I wanted more voices and more ideas in the series than just my crazy shit. There's two things that I can tell you. If you get the right person to work with, and you got to have someone who has, there can be no ego, and you've got to be really generous with each other, and it's not going to make the process easier. It's going to complicate the hell out of it. So you probably both need to agree upon a strategy going into it, how you're going to divide up the effort, how the language is going to be homogenized. Like Devin and I, we were trading off writing chapters, and I outlined the whole thing. Sometimes you can work with an outline, sometimes you can't. If you're working with someone else, I recommend you have at least a halfway decently defined outline so that everybody knows what they're doing, or there's going to be a lot of time wasted in doing rewrites and making things match up. But then after that, most people have a different voice when they write. So somebody's got to take on the role of going back and making everything sound uniform. And I took on that role in this book because it's my sandbox. So that's how we did it. But it adds time. If I write a book, my books go long. They run anywhere from 150, sometimes 200,000 words or so. And I'll usually get one of those done in about 6 months. When I was working with a partner, that was more like 9 months, 10 months. So it lengthens the process. It's a lot more work than just doing it on your own, but it is very rewarding if it works out. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes you find out once you've jumped in, oh no, I've got somebody I can't work with. So you should have meetings up front with whoever you want to work with and just really try to get an understanding of who they are and how well you'll work together.
Have you all collaborated? Any thoughts on collaboration?
I've done a couple of collaborations. They were set, one of them was set in my world, though, in the Zombie Road world. So we just had a couple of meetings together. We talked about the characters of the story arc, and I just let him run with it. And then when he was finished, I rewrote it to, like you said, put it in the right voice and to Simpsonize it. And another collaboration I did, we never did finish it because we just couldn't agree on where the story should go and how it should get there. So you should probably figure that out before you actually start. It would have saved us some time.
Okay, we're down to 5 minutes and 27 seconds. I didn't see whose hand went up first, so you have to fight it out cage match style. The question had two aspects, one of which was kind of where is Post-Apoc going, and the second was, do we use short stories or anything along that line to kind of experiment and test the market? Who wants to start? Okay. I only pay attention to the parts of Post-Apoc that seem to jump out at me, so I'm not a good voice as to the global direction that it's headed. For me personally, I am pushing my Post-Apoc in the military thriller direction because that seems to suit my writing style and my ability to market. That doesn't mean it's where the genre as a whole is going. It just means that for me, that's the easiest route to go. But I don't use short stories or any kind of test market thing like that. What I do sometimes is throw out ideas to my readers through the newsletter and see how they respond back, which of my ideas seems to excite them, which of the books are they wanting to see next. Who else?
Yeah, Miwanik, we're Press, where I've been writing the Post-Apocalyptic, our stories are more geared towards survival and traveling, to your loved ones in the midst of whatever the event is that's going on, overcoming those odds and surviving and coming together. And then we, go off on our different side stories from there. They're all, unique in that manner, but ours are more like the survival thriller, edge of your seat, page turner, constantly, battling up against one more adversity after another to reach your goal at the end. Short stories, I've only done them in conjunction with series that I already had. So I haven't done them as test series, but I do have what I call throwaway chapters in some of my series that are where they're unique to. So I've got my main characters that each have their point of view, and then every once in a while I'll throw in a totally random point of view of just someone somewhere else in the country dying. And so it's basically a short story with just that character where I'm trying to hook the reader and make them care about them in just that chapter before they die. And it's a way of me pulling the story back and reminding them that, hey, these main characters they're coming together, they're surviving, but everybody else elsewhere, they're kind of screwed. So,
Anyone else?
No, that's perfect.
I will say before we go to the next question, we're down to 2 minutes, but all of us are going to be out there floating around, so grab us, ask us questions. We're glad to answer it. Who was next?
How long are your books and what's your production time? One you were saying like 175 or 200K is like a 6-month project. How does that play out for all of you?
the question was how long are our books and how long does it take us to write them? Specifically, in our genre. I think our genre is anywhere from 50 to 60,000 words per book, upwards to over 100,000 and more. And I think we're headed in a direction of the longer the better. For readers, they enjoy that the most. My current series, 6 books, each book was close to 100,000 words, and I managed to hit, with my last 3, I would do one every 2 months. So, and that's written, edited, completely done. So I can write about 60,000 words a month. So I could do a shorter novel, one a month.
100,000, 120,000, one every 3 or 4 months.
It's about the same for me.
I'm an engineer by day, so it takes me a little longer.
We're down to 40 seconds. Quick question?
Are there any tropes of the genre that you consider to be so overused you would avoid them at all costs?
What trope is overused to the point we're sick of it? Anybody?
I can think of writing that I'm sick of, but not components of a story. There's nothing. You're never going to come up with something original. You gotta go for the ingredients, the parts and pieces that speak the most to you, and then write them the best way you would write them. I could say I'm sick and tired of reading about zombies, except when I'm not. When I find a book that finds a way to make it interesting or reinvigorate it or somebody just told a beautiful story, end.
That's all. But thank you very much.
Carry this on outside if you want.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.